Metro 4 is an upcoming first-person shooter video game that is being developed by 4A Games and published by THQ Nordic. The last entry in the series, Metro Exodus, was released back in 2019, and the community has already been connecting news about the upcoming title. The franchise has been one of the most consistent series in the gaming scene in terms of quality of game, along with the commercial and community praise. More recently, rumors have started to circulate around the next game in the franchise. Let's break down the first announcement, publisher changes, and recent news. As always, all the sources will be linked in the description down below, so make sure to check those out and support those original writers. And with that out of the way, let's get into everything we know about Metro 4. So we need to start with some context before we get into the actual news. If you don't know anything about the Metro games, they are based off a series of books by Dmitry Glukhovsky, and as the video game series has progressed, his role in the game development has increased. He only slightly collaborated with 4A Games for Metro 2033, but then he was brought in to actually write Metro Last Light and Metro Exodus. And this ties into the first mention of the game, which was in August of 2019, when Dmitry took to his personal Instagram and posted an image of Metro Exodus with a "to be continued" text on the bottom. The caption of the post itself said, quote, "The Metro gaming series will be continued, working on a story." And this isn't too surprising that the writing of the game would have already started. Development time between the game series up to this point has been 3 years between the first and second game, 1 year between the second game and the remaster, and then 5 years between the remaster and Exodus, which is relatively quick in terms of development for any game series. And this means we could see the next entry, this Metro 4, within 3 to 5 years after Exodus, so we could see it at the earliest by 2022. Then the news stayed relatively quiet until August of 2020 when it was announced that Embracer Group, which is a combination of THQ and Nordic Games, it announced that Embracer would acquire 100% of the shares in 4A Games. The studio already had a relationship with the Metro franchise due to some confusing parent company transitions, because the games were published by Deep Silver, which is owned by Koch Media, which was acquired by Embracer Group, which is the same as THQ Nordic. So for the sake of this video though, all you need to know is that all the shares for 4A Games were acquired by Embracer Group, but Embracer Group said that 4A Games will still operate as an independent developer under this deal, but will work closer with Saber Interactive, who are known for assisting on a variety of titles like World War Z, the Crysis Remaster, Killing Floor, Halo, and Time Shift. And this just gives 4A Games more resources to help develop their games and additional manpower to keep development processes happening faster. And then the CEO of 4A Games, Dean Sharp, gave additional details about the change and how the team would utilize the extra development expertise of Saber Interactive. He said, quote, "One of the things that makes this opportunity so exciting for us is that for a long time we wanted to do a really immersive and ambitious multiplayer component to Metro, which has been elusive to us up until this point." He continued on saying, "Together we will continue to build on the Metro franchise and will focus on bringing a multiplayer experience to our fan base. We look forward to building a new and even more ambitious AAA IP in the near future." The team also announced they had 2 new projects in development at this time. One we know is Metro 4 and the other is a new IP. And for the most part, this was the first mention that Metro 4 could have some sort of multiplayer component. We don't really have any other details to confirm this until later in the video, and any answers as to what this multiplayer will be are just speculation. We aren't sure if it will be player versus player or a player versus environment component where you can explore this vast world with multiple other players. So I will leave that open for everyone to decide for themselves. Also in that same month, John Block did an interview with the Video Games Chronicle and talked about the future of the Metro franchise and gave additional details about what fans can expect from upcoming titles. The first question we have to talk about, which doesn't give any real information, is when John was asked about the studio's plans for the future, and John said, quote, "While we have nothing to announce at this time, we have no plans to actively move away from the Metro franchise." And none of this is too surprising, and that's why we know the IP they are working on is Metro, and that's why we can say this mystery game will be Metro 4. When asked about the DLC for Metro Exodus following other characters than the main game's protagonist, and if this could change the role of side players in central roles moving forward, John said, quote, "We like to use the opportunity of DLC to try new and different things. Showing the story from different perspectives seems to be a pretty popular offering. And part of the success with Last Light's DLC contributed to some of the decisions to have a more developed and larger central cast in Exodus. Not specifically because we planned at that point to do DLC with other characters, but because players seem to be getting to know other characters a lot." And he closes out by saying in Sam's story that we get the opportunity to experiment pretty extensively with some different ideas that came directly from player feedback in Exodus, which seem very well received and therefore could end up in future games. When asked about the game's setting eventually leaving Russia for the United States or other countries like the DLC for Metro Exodus, John said, quote, "The book side of Dmitry Glukovsky's franchise has explored this idea many times over, so we definitely think it presents opportunities for interesting stories and experiences in other places. Whether we do that in games or not, you'll just have to wait and see." So it sounds like he doesn't close the door on us eventually leaving Russia and going to other places around the world and seeing how they've adapted to this post-apocalyptic world, but we'll just have to wait and see if that's just for DLCs or if that will eventually make it into a main game in the series. He was also asked if the development team will continue to open up the world and create bigger sandbox areas, and he responded saying, "The formula we came up with in Exodus is a natural progression for the studio. The ambition for Metro 2033 originally was for an open world RPG style game, as the team had mostly just come off of Stalker and wanted to do something similar. Eventually, the game was redesigned to be much more tightly constructed, linear, and incredibly atmospheric experience that everyone is familiar with. Only with recent advancements in technology were we able to realize part of the original dream in Metro Exodus, where we introduced the more sandbox-style, larger levels to the franchise. The formula took 2.5 years to develop to find for Exodus, and we did refine it further with Sam's story as we listened to fan feedback and made direct changes because of it. The whole process has been iterative from the beginning." So it sounds like for the next generation, with now even more power with consoles, they could create even more massive world and create huge sandbox areas, and I'm excited to see how they take this in the future, especially if they have the base work done with that initial formula that they said took 2.5 years to make. And if they've made it good in Exodus, then even better in Sam's story. I can't wait to see what they're doing with it with the next full entry. In terms of next generation, he also said the team is most excited about ray tracing in games, along with faster loading times and streaming. And he also said they plan on taking full advantage of the new platforms. And the final question that was asked was in regards to the multiplayer Metro announcement. And he said, quote, "We've dabbled in these thoughts in the past. Prototypes were made, but never really got anywhere. We wouldn't want to just make a generic multiplayer for the sake of doing it, and we wouldn't want something to feel tacked on just to tick a box. Additionally, we appreciate that having a multiplayer mode takes an entire team the same size as the single player experience and just as much time. Doing both at the same time would require some significant changes, and most importantly, we would not want to sacrifice the quality, scope, or experience of the single player experience of Metro for something like this. If we did explore this further, it would need to be done right." And to me, it sounds like they haven't completely ruled out the idea of having multiplayer, especially with the extra development help of Saber Interactive, who does have a lot of multiplayer experience, but it sounds like they still really haven't figured out the formula completely to make multiplayer work in the Metro franchise. And that's not to say their other new mystery IP might not have multiplayer components, but it just does become more complex with an established franchise like Metro. So it is reassuring to hear that the team won't include multiplayer just for the sake of having multiplayer, if you were worried about that from the initial news. And the last information comes directly from the Metro team and an article they posted on their website in November of 2020. The team announced the future of Metro and their plans for the series. They started by saying, "It's no secret we have already started work on the next Metro game. Using everything we've learned from the last 15 years, we've set our sights even higher. The next title is being built for Gen 9 consoles and PC, with a complete overhaul of our engine, and rendered to take advantage of the new power, storage, and hardware supported ray tracing afforded by the new consoles. We're not ready to share anything more, but we wanted to reassure our fans about a few important topics. First, we're committed to delivering a great story-driven single-player experience. This is what the Metro series is founded on. As a studio, we want to constantly push ourselves to create bigger and better games. But we also listen to what fans are saying, and we know what's important to you. We take our responsibility to the franchise seriously, and we think you'll be excited about our plans for the next chapter. And right away they confirmed the game will be on next generation consoles, and it will be a new system for them to learn for the Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5. They did work on the last generation a lot, with the remasters and Exodus late in the console lifecycle, and it looks like this time they're trying to avoid that late in a console lifecycle release. They also make sure to tell fans the game will still be single player, and then transition into the multiplayer news. They continue on saying, at the same time, our partnership with Saber will allow us to explore something that has always been an ambition for 4A Games, but something we have never been able to commit to until now, a multiplayer experience in the Metro universe. As a small studio, we have never been able to do justice to these ambitions, and our ideas have never made it beyond the prototype phase. But with Saber's experience in online gaming, we are now actively exploring multiplayer concepts that will offer a new way to experience the world of Metro. We know some of our fans have concerns whenever they hear multiplayer mentioned, so we wanted to tackle this topic head on and talk about some of the goals and principles behind this early exploration. Let's start by saying we hear your concerns. We are not looking at multiplayer as a box-ticking exercise, or to jump on some trend or bandwagon. As creators, we want to explore a multiplayer experience that makes complete sense in the Metro universe. We're also committed to ensuring that whatever we do, it's not to the detriment of our single-player ambitions. We'll need a dedicated team focused solely on the online component, and this is what our new partnership with Saber can bring. Years of expertise, technology, and know-how to help us realize our ambitions. Additionally, a reminder that it's still early days. None of the thoughts above mean that the next Metro game will be multiplayer only, or that the next game will have single player and multiplayer in the same package. We're still figuring things out, but know that we are absolutely committed to more single player, story-driven experiences in the Metro universe that our fans have come to know and love. And I think for the most part, this is what fans are hoping for. The team is still focusing on single player, but they're not ruling out the idea of multiplayer, or it could be a side game altogether, which they kind of hint at that it might not even be in the next game and it could be a whole separate project. The game is still very early in development and a lot could change. So what should fans expect for the franchise in 2021 and beyond? I stand by the initial statement that the project will still probably follow normal development time for the series, and if the script writing and potential early pre-production started in 2019, I would expect a release of the game sometime between 2022 and 2024. I know it's not the smallest range, and at the end of the day it is just a guess, but it sounds like the team has already made decent progress, and if the script is finished, they can start to move forward sculpting the game and figuring out how to utilize the next generation of consoles. And that for the most part is everything we know about Metro 4. As always, make sure to like and share this video, subscribe for weekly gaming news, and I will see you guys in the next one.